Hello all and welcome back to another wonderful story. That's right, we're going to share another story here on the channel. I've done a few of these. I have a playlist. You can probably find it in the top right corner or perhaps even at the end of the video or somewhere. It'll be somewhere. Look, listen, there's a bunch of these short stories that I've been sharing lately. So we're going to continue that and we're going to share this next one I wrote called God's Experiment. The sounds of their discussion blended together as the argument reached its climax. It would only have been one more second for the argument to turn into war if it hadn't been for God. God appeared between hundreds of gigantic beings, almighty and all-powerful in appearance. These beings stopped their arguing immediately and looked down at God. God looked up at them all and scratched their head. They had no idea what was going on. Seconds ago, they were driving their truck home after a long day, and suddenly they are here? What's going on? God asked. I'll explain, one of the beings hurriedly volunteered. Hey, wait, why do you get to explain? Another questioned. If anyone should explain, it should be me, yet another chimed in. They all began arguing at once, and the sounds became a mesh of words and incoherent screaming until God finally yelled out at them. Quiet! The beings stopped their arguing again, but gave each other dirty looks as God spoke again. You there, God said, pointing at a random being. You tell me what is going on. The being God chose was excited. They rubbed their hands together in anticipation. Okay, first, what do you remember? The being asked. Well, just my life. It was really rough, but I managed to make it a half-decent life for myself and my family. I was actually on my way home to them when suddenly I appeared here, God explained. None of that was real, the being casually stated. God was speechless. Could this really be true? Was nothing real all this time? No! God refused to believe that and shook his head to the others. That can't possibly be true. Do you expect me to believe it was all just some sort of dream? It was merely an experiment, a different being chimed in. The one God chose to speak gave a look of disgust at them before turning to God. The experiment was supposed to help us find peace. You see, we created everything together. And then we started fighting about it, another being chimed in. It was never ending. We attacked each other in a war that lasted for infinity, yet another being added. So you were all gods? Does this mean I died? God asked. Yes and yes. You too are one of us, a god capable of just as much as any of us, and it was your idea to conduct this experiment. God sat down. This was so much to process that the wind had been knocked out of them, and their legs felt like jelly. It was you who ended that war with an idea to create a place where none of us have control, not even yourself, a deity added. You wanted to live in that reality whilst we watched, and in this way, we may learn peace. So then, it was for nothing, God wondered out loud. We are still arguing, are we not? God began to tear up as the memories began returning. The infinite carnage of war and death and cruelty flickered in their mind. It was not much different here than it was in the experiment. Humans were just like gods, endlessly fighting in gruesome wars and petty arguments. Their whole life there had been spent fighting against the system just to afford to eat and remain sheltered from certain death. Everything was a fight there, and everything is a fight here. Is this the way that all of existence had to be? Why are we fighting? Why did all of this begin? God begged for an answer. All the deities looked at one another and their surroundings. Some of them whispered to each other, discussing theories. The truth finally became realized by all. We have no fucking clue, one of the deities answered. Then why can't we just calm ourselves and come together? God asked. Because every time one of us does something, the rest are insulted, aggravated, or disgusted, a deity answered quickly. God looked around and then down. Only now did they realize that below them all was the reality they had just left from. God waved their hands and zoomed around the reality, looking through everything it had, everything it was, and everything it would be. I have our solution, God proclaimed. The deities held their breath, crossed their arms, rolled their eyes, and did every gesture and noise that could possibly show a lack of faith in this statement. The reality I had lived in was not the greatest, but it was an experience we could never have here. The reality had its problems that I wish to fix now that I know I can, but it is special because of its flaws, God began. Some of the deities soon started to take God more seriously and believe that they may have indeed found the solution. We created that reality together with no arguing or hateful glances. It was the one time we were united, and personally my time in that reality has changed me. I believe we must all have that experience. I believe the solution for our lack of peace is in spending time there. In a reality where we have no control, I'd rather fight for infinity again, a deity argued. More deities joined in the argument until it was an incoherent screaming and raging. God looked at the arguing and sighed. They looked down at the reality they had come from and closed their eyes. There was no choice. The deities began fighting and harming one another. One of them died quickly and then reappeared into existence nearby. The fighting was cut short by God, who stomped their foot and became larger than them all. A terrifying boom shook everything, and each of the deities became small like God was moments ago. The arguing slowed down to whispers before ending altogether. Together, their hate and anger had been directed towards God, who now seemed to have all the power. "What's the meaning of this?" a deity demanded to know. "What have you done?" another demanded. "There is only but one way to end our suffering, and that is to suffer in a reality where we cannot be gods," God proclaimed. There was no time for arguing. God clapped their hands, and every deity, except for themselves, vanished and were put into the reality God had just left from. Each became a normal person with no memory and no power over reality. God smiled down at them, knowing that this would be the solution. They would live lives and die and return here with new perspectives, understanding peace, relief, and truth in their hearts and minds. And that's that story. I like to call that one God's Experiment. It's a nice little concept I came up with at like 1 in the morning, probably. I don't really remember. And I wrote the whole thing down in my notes in one night because I couldn't get it out of my head. And then there it was on paper and then on my computer, and now to all of you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little story. As always, I would love any sort of critiquing that you guys can give me on this short story. If there's anything that you think I should have done differently, if you guys wanted to see different gameplay, if you think I should do just literally anything different with these kinds of videos, let me know in the comments below, and I'll definitely get around to doing that for the next one. But for now, that is God's Experiment, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, maybe even becoming a channel member, and doing all kinds of wonderful things like that. Because when you do wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful for yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.